achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I'm your host, Scott Johnson, and I am on location again this week, broadcasting from my favorite place to watch MMA, and the place I'll be watching UFC 157 in about a week's time. And that's the event we're going to be breaking down with this episode. The 5 main card fights for UFC 157, which will take place on February 23rd, 2013, featuring the first ever women's matchup in the UFC as Ronda Rousey defends her bantamweight title against challenger Liz Carmouche. All of my preliminary predictions will be available over at kamikazeoverdrive.net, along with the public picks section, which please go over, make your picks, see who the public's backing. The more people that vote, the better. The prediction panel will be posting their predictions. I'm hoping maybe might have a couple extra new predictors, or at least old predictors coming back for this episode, so please check them out. And the bet packs will also be available. I did say if I didn't have a very good UFC 150 or UFC on Fuel TV 7 night, which I didn't. I've had two poor back-to-back shows, but I would send out free passwords to everybody who bought the packs for UFC on Fuel TV 7, which I've already done. If you haven't got a password sent to you yet, please email me and we will get that straightened out. But the packs will be on sale. And again, all I can do is keep working hard and hopefully turn things around, starting with this event. Before I get into my predictions, as always, thank you very much to all of my supporting websites who host and post my videos: MMABettingOdds.com, Walkoutwear, MMACrypt.com, HeartandGlory.com, BoneSnapper.com, Fantasy MMA HQ, CouchFighter.co. Also, of course, shout out to Fight Metric, where I get all of my stats from. That's where you can head over to pick your stats out from if you're interested in looking at these fights yourself. But that's enough for me. We got 5 predictions. Let's get into the first one in the welterweight division. Our first prediction of the evening features Josh Koscheck, 19-6-0, taking on the returning ruthless one, Robbie Lawler, 19-9-0 with 1 no contest. Koscheck's last appearance was a split decision loss to Johnny Hendricks, while Robbie Lawler last fought against Lorenz Larkin in Strikeforce and lost a decision as well. Now looking at these, so this is Lawler's return to the UFC, last fought here in 2004, and he's also returning to welterweight where he competed in the UFC in the past as well. Now Lawler has a wrestling background, but he is primarily a striker with a 16-1 record in fights ending by knockout. He has big-time power, knocking out guys like Matt Lindland, Amagov, Manhoof, Scott Smith, Trigg, another one. He has power in his hands, but he also threw a flying knee, which took out Amagov in that fight. Now, he needs to use a lot of lateral movement in this matchup to set up his combinations, and he has a striking edge, landing 2.14 strikes per minute compared to Koscheck at 1.89. Now, he has had trouble with wrestling-based fighters in the past. Jacare took him down 4 times in 8 attempts. Tim Kennedy also had success, landing 5 takedowns, but he has a decent takedown percentage, or defense percentage, at 62%, but he has been submitted 5 times in his career, so again, that appears to be his Achilles heel. Now, in the Kennedy fight, he showed very fast hips and did well in the Jacare fight as well, kept moving and bobbing, but eventually in both fights he was caught and planted on that mat. Now, the Kennedy fight, again, it showed how difficult he is to control on the ground because Lawler had Tim Kennedy very tired in the 3rd round, but he let him off the hook because, again, he was a little hesitant to engage, trying to avoid getting taken off his feet. Big question here is how will the cut to welterweight affect him, and the speed advantage he seemed to have at middleweight should be gone against the smaller, faster guys at 170 pounds. Now, Koscheck is an NCAA Division I wrestler, averages 2.56 takedowns per fight, completing 54% of his attempts. Now, he knows how to use his takedowns to both dominate fights, as we saw when he fought Paul Daly, and to win rounds, as he did against Mike Pierce. He has an explosive power double, very difficult to deal as he smashes right through it. He's a black belt in BJJ, and he has 5 wins by submission, including taking out Rumble Johnson. In that fight, he waited till Johnson got tired and did a very effective job. Now, he does have power in his hands, big right hand, which he knocked out Trigg, and he knocked out Yuki Yoshida as well, and he stopped Matt Hughes on the ground. He has to avoid headhunting, which got him in trouble against Paulo Thiago, where he was looking for the big shot and couldn't hit it, and eventually got himself knocked out. Now, the damage that GSP did seems to affect him, did to his face. Hendricks and Pierce both had success, and even Matt Hughes had some success hitting Koscheck and backing him off and bothering him with some facial damage. But other than the Paulo Thiago loss, his only 2 losses in his last 9 fights have come against George St. Pierre and Johnny Hendricks, both very good MMA wrestlers. Now, that's not what Robbie Lawler is. Lawler needs to keep moving, remain vertical, and attack and land with power. Koss needs to mix things up with strikes and shoot for takedowns and wear Robbie Lawler down, and I think that's what he'll do. So I have Josh Koscheck to defeat Robbie Lawler by decision. In the welterweight division as well, Court the Crusher McGee 13-3-0 battles the dentist Josh Neer 33-12-1. Court McGee has lost back-to-back fights against Nick Ring and Costa Philippou while competing at middleweight, while Josh Neer has also lost back-to-back fights, one by knockout and one by technical submission. Now, McGee is debuting at welterweight, but he's the same height as Josh Neer, so not gaining a lot there, but he'll have a 3.5-inch reach advantage, which he'll look to take advantage of. Now, Neer, as I said, was knocked out by Pyle and subbed by Edwards in his last 2 fights. And, it's interesting to take a look at Neer's losses by finishes are starting to climb, and you wonder if that's not a product of his offense first and war for the sake of warring style as opposed to maybe fighting a little bit smarter. Now, he does have a diverse finishing ability himself, 17 wins by knockout and 12 wins by submission, so he's very capable in all facets of the game to win fights. He's very aggressive, excellent clinch work. We saw those short elbows against Wisniewski, which he did a lot of damage with in that fight. And he's a brawler, almost like one of the Diaz brothers in the style he approaches, just keeps coming forward and basically caution to the wind, attack. As I said, he likes to move forward aggressively, but sometimes this happens to his own detriment. Was moving forward when Pyle KO'd him, and he was shooting for a takedown against Edwards when he got caught in the guillotine, which eventually put him away. Now, Court McGee is known for his conditioning, excellent cardio, and he does a nice job of pouring it on late, or at least when his opponents start to fail, as we saw him do against Jansen, Dong Yi Yang, and Nick Ring. Even though he lost that fight, I felt he beat Nick Ring in that matchup. He throws a high volume of strikes. He has a significant edge at 4.77 strikes per minute to 3.04 for Josh Neer. But he also takes a high volume of damage, getting hit 3.58 times. But again, when he lands almost one strike per minute more than his opponents, you can absorb that damage and at least deal with it that way. He has a diverse combat sports background, karate. He's a BJJ blue belt, has some boxing mixed in there. 7 wins by submission overall, 2 in the UFC, and excellent takedown defense, 83%. While turning the tables and landing 2.08 takedowns per fight, which tells us he can take the fight to the ground or prevent it from going there if he chooses, which is a very important aspect of mixed martial arts. Now, against Josh Neer, he needs to outwork Neer, use punch and kick combinations to pick him apart, and pile up the damage. I don't see him having the one-punch knockout power. Just keep doing damage and wear Josh Neer down. He should benefit in this matchup from not having to deal with the bigger guys he was fighting at middleweight who could absorb the damage that he was dishing out. Now, for Neer, he needs to make this into a brawl, but hurt McGee, who has never been stopped. He needs to do some serious damage early and take the wind out of his sails. What I'm looking at here is Neer's going to slow down if he's forced to fight at a high pace for a long period of time, either by having to deal with McGee or at least put damage on him. That's going to make it difficult. And I'm actually going to take Court McGee to defeat Josh Neer by TKO. Our next fight comes in the bantamweight division as the California Kid, Urijah Faber, 26-6-0, battles the Pride of El Salvador, Ivan Menjivar, 25-9-0. Faber coming off an interim title fight loss against Renan Barão, while Menjivar picking up a submission victory back at UFC 154. Now, both these guys have actually fought each other before. It was in 2006 under the TKO banner, and Faber won that matchup by DQ for an illegal kick to a downed opponent. So certainly some unfinished business between these two veteran fighters. Now, Faber has never lost back-to-back fights in his career, and that's what he's facing here. And just to give you a perspective of what level Urijah usually competes at, 5 of his 6 defeats in his career have come in title fights, so that's it's pretty impressive. Now, in each of his fights, like I said, he's rebounded to win the next one after losing a fight, and he has submitted each opponent in those fights, including taking out guys like Jens Pulver, Rafael Assunção, Takeo Mizugaki, and Brian Bowles. That's an impressive list of opponents to have defeated and submitted. Faber's an alpha male product, NCAA Division I wrestler, BJJ brown belt. He's 14-0 in fights that end in submission, and he's very good on the ground. But interestingly enough, he only averages 1.22 takedowns per fight at 29% completion rate. So not exactly the numbers you would expect from a guy like Faber. Now, he has had trouble in some fights. Barão went 0 for 6 in takedowns. Cruz 1 for 5 and 2 for 11 against Eddie Wineland. So if you can stuff his takedowns and take away that grappling aspect, you can limit one of his weapons at least. But as we saw in the Eddie Wineland fight, he has the ability to strike. He's a very creative striker. He uses his speed well, and he's hard to hit defending 66% of his opponent's offense. Now, he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, which is something he's not used to having in this match, well, at least in this matchup, and that's something I expect him to take advantage of. Against the Brian Bowles, he did a lot of damage to Bowles in the feet and was able to mix it up in the Wineland fight, as I said, when his takedowns weren't working. Now, Ivan Menjivar is a veteran fighter with a ton of experience, 34 pro fights in all, and he's fought in a variety of weight classes, so he's got a lot of experience to build upon when coming into a fight like this. He has an edge in strikes landed per fight at 3.3 per minute, 3.3 to 2.37. So if this fight does go the distance, that could take an effect. Lots of spinning attacks, unorthodox striker, 10 wins by knockout, and he has only been stopped once. In his UFC debut, he took out Charlie Valencia by a brutal elbow TKO, and he has the ability to stop guys if he's able to land. Now, he did struggle with the pressure and power of Mike Easton. He seemed to be a little bit hesitant to engage because of what Easton was, the pressure he was putting on him. He needs space, set up his striking attacks, and he likes that distance. Now, he's a tri-star product. BJJ brown belt, and he's 9-1 in fights that end by submission. He's got 2 submission wins in the UFC, and tapped out Joe Lozon in a fight outside of the UFC. Now, he has been taken down in a lot of his fights, but he is crafty on the ground, as we saw in his last fight, picking up that submission victory. Brad Pickett had a lot of success with his takedowns, landing 3 on 9 attempts, and he ended up winning that fight. Now, Faber is the more explosive fighter. He needs to avoid getting caught when he comes forward, keep pressure on to limit Menjivar's time to set up, and that should give him the edge in the striking. If he can use takedown attempts to mix things up and keep Menjivar guessing, that will be to his benefit. For Menjivar, he simply needs to pull the trigger, use a lot of movement, and avoid being too active. But I like what Urijah Faber's done. I like his track record. So my prediction is Urijah Faber to defeat Ivan Menjivar by submission. We now head to the co-main event of the evening in the light heavyweight division, and a matchup that has title implications written all over it, as Lyoto the Dragon Machida, 18-3-0, battles Dan Henderson, 29-8-0. Machida, a former UFC champion, Henderson, a former Strikeforce and Pride champion. Machida coming off a knockout win over Ryan Bader, while Dan Henderson's last appearance was a UFC 139 victory over Shogun Rua. That's the first thing. He has not fought since late November 2011, so over a year of inactivity coming off that injury at UFC 151. So we'll have to see if that impacts Henderson's performance. Now, what we have in this matchup is a combination, or at least a head-to-head collision, of Henderson's H-bomb and really coiled power against Machida's elusive distance management and striking. Now, as I said, Henderson has ridiculous power. If he can land with that big right hand, his H-bomb took out Michael Bisping, Fodor, and Rafael Feijão. He's 13-0 in fights that end by knockout, so he has an excellent chin. Now, he beat Shogun for the most part because Shogun stood right in front of him and traded with him and didn't use footwork or kicks, and that was to Dan Henderson's benefit. He comes from a wrestling background as well, but he doesn't use it that offensively as much as other fighters do, only averaging 1.84 takedowns per fight at 57%. So if he can and he wants to, he can take you down. A couple instances where he has used them. He nailed 3 takedowns against Rafael Feijão. He went 4 for 6 against Rich Franklin. He's very tough in the clinch, excellent hips, great balance. But in his last 7 of his last 9 fights, he's used 1 takedown or fewer, and even in the Shogun fight, he lost the takedown battle at 5-1. Now, he needs to use some clinch fighting, I think, in this matchup, dirty boxing, Randy Couture style, to slow down Lyoto Machida, like John Jones did, not allow him to use that distance and that range. Couple big knocks on Henderson. He gets way too focused on headhunting. He doesn't set up his right hand and just throws it, and Machida, a talented striker like Machida, will be able to avoid it for the most part. Additionally, his cardio is a major issue. This is only a 3-round fight. We've still seen him slow down, and he needs to be at top level. And with the layoff, I expect that to play a role if this fight does go into the second half. Now, Machida, incredibly difficult to hit, absorbs 1.41 strikes per minute, so when Henderson hits him, he needs to make it count, or else he's going to be up against it. Now, Shogun had success with kicks in the first fight, and he caught Machida closing the distance in the second, so it's not like it's impossible to hit him, it's just hard. Machida was doing very well in the Jones fight, moving in and then attacking, using a lot of lateral movement in and out. He needs to mix it up against Dan to avoid letting Dan time him and land that big right hand. Now, in the Bader fight, he only attempted 31 strikes in 6.5 minutes, but it was effective. We saw what the end result was, and he limited Bader to 7 strikes landed, which is impressive, and he forced Bader to rush in, and that ultimately cost Bader the fight. Now, he needs to be careful not to be too inactive, as was the case when he fought Rampage Jackson, and Henderson stalking and Machida backing up, even though that's part of Lyoto's game plan, will not look good with the judges. Machida landed, in the Rampage fight, he landed better punches and more effective punches, but Rampage landed more and appeared to be more aggressive, and that's what gave him the end decision, whether we agree with it or not. Machida 2 wins by submission, but he has deceptive takedown skills. He took down Rampage, Shogun, Thiago, and Tito Ortiz. So, that's something. I don't expect to see him shooting on Henderson. Henderson's so tough to take off his feet. And again, he should avoid this because this will put him in the range for Henderson to land that big bomb. Now, Henderson's never been knocked out, but he was staggered by Fedor, and Rafael Feijo actually did some damage to hurt him in the early going, dropped him, sending him backwards. I could see Machida earning a late KO or TKO if Henderson starts to get tired, but I think he'll outwork him, outpoint him, do damage, but not put himself at risk. So my prediction is Lyoto Machida to defeat Dan Henderson by decision. Our main event is a historic UFC fight, as the first ever women's fight will go down in the UFC, as Ronda Rousey 6-0 will defend her bantamweight title against Liz Gorilla Carmouche 17-2-0. Ronda Rousey coming off a submission win of her former champion Sarah Kaufman, while Liz Carmouche, who lost to Kaufman, has now won 2 in a row since that fight, both under the Invicta banner. Now, Rousey, we all know what she's about. Olympic judo bronze medalist, 6-0 in her MMA career, her pro career, all wins by submission, 3-0 in her amateur career, all wins by submission, and all by armbar, never getting out of the first round. She averages 11.69 takedowns per fight at a completion rate of 63%, and really, except for Miesha Tate, she's only needed 1 takedown to win each fight when it really comes down to it. Her mode of operation is close the distance, tie up, use a hip toss throw, and either move directly into an armbar position or gain the mount. Start dropping little shots that aren't meant to do damage, just be irritating and force the opponent to cover up, and then look for an arm to hook, and then rotate into the armbar. Now, looking at Carmouche, as I said, she's won 2 in a row, and she nearly won the title back in 2011. A lot of people are looking at Carmouche, especially the odds, as she's being being led to slaughter, which certainly could be an issue in this matchup. But as I said, she nearly won the title back in 2011, dominating Marloes Kunin before getting caught with a triangle in the 4th round of that matchup. She averages 2.45 takedowns per fight at a 60% takedown completion rate, and 5 wins by knockout, but she really struggled in the Sarah Kaufman fight when she couldn't get the fight to the ground, or at least dominate the grappling aspect of it, only landing 1 takedown on 9 attempts. In this matchup, she needs to defend the takedown and hope Rousey gets tired. And the same thing, Rousey has never really been hit before, and Carmouche needs to test her striking, and they've said it in the media, and I agree. If you're going to beat Ronda Rousey, you need to hit her hard and do it as quickly as you possibly can, because you don't know how long it is before you're going for a ride and being taken to the ground. So if Carmouche can put a shot on Rousey's chin and test her, we could see an upset happen, but that's still, I thought Sarah Kaufman had an opportunity to do that, but she did not in that matchup. And you look at Rousey, up until the Tate fight, she really hadn't faced a lot of adversity, but she was able to endure some difficult situations early against Miesha and then still get the armbar victory. I think that was an excellent test. I give Liz Carmouche 100% credit for stepping up and taking this fight, and huge opportunity to headline a UFC event in the first ever women's UFC fight. But I still think what this comes down to is, Rousey is just has the superior skill set when it comes to judo and grappling. So my prediction is Ronda Rousey, not much of a surprise, to defeat Liz Carmouche by submission. Most likely armbar, but you never know. Rousey might look to mix it up a little bit. So those are my UFC 157 main card fights predictions. All of my preliminary fight predictions will be available over at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so please check them out. The prediction panel will be posting their predictions as well. The public pick section is there, so please vote on the fights and the fighters you think are going to win, as well as the bet packs will be available. I'm looking to hopefully turn it around with this event. I know I picked all favorites on the main card. Check out my preliminary predictions. I think I have an upset or 2 waiting down there. But let's hope for a better night. I think it should be a better night. Either way, thank you as always for listening. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions.